Lauren Baptiste, one of my newest friends. Welcome to the Human to Human podcast. I'm so grateful to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Look at
I'm
the
excited for
amazing,
a human experience. I
well, I
miss
mean,
them.
looks like you're creative. You've got a bunch of artwork behind you. You're coming in with a big smile. Is this what you're normally like?
I would say so. I mean, I'm not as creative. Don't give me that much credit. I have good friends who are creative and I just like to showcase their work. But yeah, I always am coming in as light as possible.
Amazing. I'm super excited to talk to you today about a range of topics from burnout to how burnout has changed this year in 2020. I think we've all gotten punched or rocked to some degree in 2020. Talking about stress and how to navigate stress, talk about company culture, relationships, and really just takeaways and how to be a better and healthier person. Does that sound fair?
I love it. Let's dive right in.
So my first question is, give me a little bit of an idea as to kind of like who you are and what brought you here today. And I don't mean here on this podcast, but what brought you to where you are today in life?
Absolutely. Um, so as mentioned, I always feel like I have to say my name again, but I'm Lauren Baptiste and I'm the founder of Acheloa Wellness. And so let me take you a few steps back before I even got there. So I've been in financial services for over 10 years. And in that world, I experienced burnout firsthand. I saw it in others as it related to weight gain loss, infertility, migraines, anxiety, so many different things. But it wasn't until it happened to me that I was like, oh, I get it. And so for me, it was somewhere in the middle of my career that I experienced a significant burnout episode. I traveled halfway across the country, long hours, a lot of travel, week over week, and it just piled up. And so for someone who's physically strong and has stamina and mental fortitude to push through anything, my body started to revolt, really. It was until my body said no more that I ended up in a hospital that things started to spiral. And to be honest, that rock bottom was my turning point that things have to change, not only for myself, but that moment was also a real reminder that a lot of individuals are experiencing this. And now this wasn't called burnout. Um, you know, actually it was 8 years ago now when I'm thinking about it. The doctor was like, you're just stressed. Are you stressed at work? Maybe you should take a vacation. But now we know 2019 Worldwide Health Organization came out with burnout as a diagnosable disease. And so here we are. Fast forwarding through that, a few years ago, I started my business, Acheloa Wellness, focusing on breaking through the effects of stress so that individuals can thrive. And so I do that in a myriad of ways. I do it one-on-one coaching, but I also am an international speaker. I'm a corporate well-being consultant because I want to get to that version of me 8 years ago who was suffering. So I love being in companies and saying like, hey, let's connect, let's share this message. And so that's why it ended me up on this podcast as well, because it's so important to share this message that there is something you can do if you're at your wit's end.
Can I ask you, what were some of the warning signs that led you to burnout, or what were some of the red flags that were appearing? Because I'm willing to bet a lot of people listening to this either think they've gone through it or are currently going through it.
Yeah, and the first thing to say as loudly as I can is take those little things seriously, because don't wait until you end up in a hospital. Don't wait until it's too far gone or to burn a bridge, right? Some people leave their marriages because they're so burnt out, or they'll go to the extremes of quitting their job overnight, closing their laptop and never returning. So those are some of the extreme cases, but I want to speak to the person who's not there yet, maybe who's experienced some types of symptoms, even as eye vision gets worse because you're at a computer screen all day. Maybe shortness of breath because you don't feel that you're getting full deep breaths behind a computer. It could look like your body dealing with just, I like to call them dis-eases, right? It's like, it's not a full disease, but it's the burps, it's the constipation, it's the acne, and as an adult, it's the irregular menstruation. It's those types of symptoms that start to creep in. And then if we don't notice those, maybe we can notice the anxiety, the overwhelm, the tightness in the chest or in the neck, just that feeling of like it's never going to stop. And I can go on and on. But I love to focus on the dis-eases. So if you're experiencing chronic dis-ease, that's when I want you to laser light focus and say, what's going on? Can I go deeper? Because that might not be your real story, but that's what's showing right now.
What was going through your head when some of these red flags started happening to you? I mean, I imagine at first glance you were like, hey, this is weird, or this is not like me. I normally am not this Lauren. Were there, I guess, like, what was going through your head when some of these symptoms or just started popping up?
Part of it was like, we're all experiencing some of it. Part of it almost had this like, well, in order to do the job, I have to have gray hair in my mid-20s, or I have to be exhausted because it's the race to who can work the hardest, the longest, and burn the hard, and in those industries, it can show like that, where that's almost a good thing. So I want you to really think about, are those little things serving you? And for me, it was a lot of the little things. Like for me specifically, my eyes were burning. Like there would be parts of the day where I would literally be in an office wearing sunglasses. I was the coolest person in the room for sure, because the fluorescent lights were so intense. And then there were other things where like I was literally getting skin testing because I was breaking out in different types of skin, psoriasis, rosacea, like on parts of my body that I had never experienced before. Again, thinking it's a one-off. But the thing is, all of these little one-offs are absolutely connected.
That's so fascinating. It's all tied together. And I think many people do consider burnout. They probably have the symptoms and they're probably creeping up. And I guess my question is, like, when do you know it's completely burnout versus, like, I'm thinking to myself, I've definitely worked more since the pandemic. I've been behind my screen way more. I've been back-to-back Zoom meetings, not scheduling any breaks in between. Before I know it, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. some days, I am just behind a screen. And a part of me has that mentality that you just mentioned, like, hey, like, now's the time to grind. Now's the time to build the business. Now's the time to go all in. But how do you distinguish, like, health, I guess?
So many questions there. It's like, that's
Yeah,
so
I'm sorry.
loaded. No,
I tend to get excited and I ask
I
15
love it.
questions at once.
No, I love
And
it. I love it. So I'm going to break it into like two questions of like, how do you know when you're burnt out? And then the second one, we'll talk about maybe of like, what is health? And they're related and they kind of play together. But, burnout, according to the official definition, right, it's these feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from your job. So maybe you're really passionate about your job, but you're just feeling a little bit numb to the job. And then also just not as productive. And so it's very vague. Most of us right now can probably say each of those. COVID absolutely is affecting productivity. Most individuals I'm speaking to are saying that they're not sleeping. So that's absolutely going to lead to energy depletion and exhaustion. And to be honest, right now, when you're worried about getting toilet paper, I don't know how concerned you are in the moment of doing your job the best it can be. So even if we're not, stamped diagnosable disease, like you're burnt, I think we're all, I think of it as a spectrum. And I think we're all teetering more towards the burnt side than the feeling refreshed side. And it's going to be this real focus to start to break through that. If you go with gravity, if you're going with the flow of it, you're going to burn out. Media is rough right now. Negativity is overwhelming. Hate is strong, but we have to fight the current. And so right now I'm encouraging everyone who's listening to this today, like, join me in this fight for your own well-being.
yeah, I totally hear you. And I think something you said as well that is really landing with me is, I think most people are teetering maybe on the dangerous side, and maybe they just don't know it yet, or they're telling themselves a story that, hey, this is not burnout. I'm just working really hard right now. Since the pandemic hit us, based on your experience and what you're seeing, how has how have companies been affected? How have people been affected outside of, way more screen time, no question. But are you seeing trends of, I guess, burnout since
Yes.
and kind of how a year ago, what were we going through versus today?
Right. And I think it's so important to talk about this because burnout has changed. And so if you're trying to think about, okay, what do I compare this to? Even think about COVID. It comes into the body, but it manifests differently for each individual. Burnout is also like a virus in the sense that it's manifesting different based on the environment that it's in. So what burnout used to look like, let's say 6, 7, 8 months ago, traveling across the country, running around your own city to go to client offices, eating a lot of takeout because you didn't have time to cook a meal. Now it's so different. We're dealing with Zoom fatigue. So we're always on camera. We always have to show up. We have to make all of our own meals, it really takes at least I feel like an hour and a half
It
each meal.
takes
And if
so
somebody is
much time,
hacking that,
so much
please
time.
let me. By the time you cook, by the time you clean, by the time you eat, right?
Mm-hmm.
It takes time. And so now all of a sudden our day is just from one job, one chore, one task to the other. By the time you slow down, you can't sleep. Your second wind comes in a little after 10 o'clock, and then it's hard to sleep. And that's the repeated situation that a lot of us are dealing with. So burnout has changed for the employee, for the individual. And now what does that look like for companies? What we're seeing is that companies very much get what's going on. They're not aloof to employees feeling these feelings. To be honest, they are employees. They're experiencing it themselves. And maybe even some of these leaders or change makers are actually getting it because they are now home all the time. They're living the similar life to everybody else, regardless of your circumstance. We're all at home or within these four walls. The thing that I'm seeing that's becoming a bit of a challenge is this act, or I guess let's say the willingness to take action. Because right now, yeah, we get it, layoffs are happening, but what's also happening as you're laying off your people is you're throwing more work on the people that are still there. What you're also doing is creating a lot of stress where people are now in survival mode, that they have to be connected all day to feel like they're efficient. And although they understand that there's change management fatigue because of all the movement and everything going on, I don't see that greater investment beyond open communication. Not to say that's not important. I'm just under the belief that it's not enough.
It's so interesting. I never even thought about the added work for existing teammates when someone does get let go. I think when the pandemic first hit, you saw it every day in the news. Big companies letting go of 10% of their workforce, 15%, 30%, industry by industry. Airlines got it bad, restaurants got it bad. And I never really thought about corporate companies that their work kind of stopped, but it didn't. So there's all this new work that's being piled on to existing teammates. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's tough, right? And even when you think about non-COVID burnout or non-COVID turnover, they say the cost of somebody who's in the manager up level, the cost of that person to replace them is 1.5 their salary.
Wow.
So let's say that person's making 100K flat. It will take over 200 to cover because the training of the new person, the idea of all of the things, the recruiter, there's just all of these costs. So that's why we need to be double downing on the people that we have, on the resources and the support that we have. Because if we lose those people on top of the work that they've already added on, it's gonna really fragment an internal or an organization at the internal level. And that's why it's so important that we're taking action and we're not just waiting for people to leave, or we're not just waiting for somebody to stomp their feet and say I'm too far gone, help me. We need to be proactive about an approach to health and well-being in the corporate environment.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said about proactive. I think a lot of people found themselves in a reactive state, and nobody could have predicted this a year ago. And everybody is kind of in this shitstorm together, figuring it out together. And so many companies do not think about the cost of replacing staff. It's insane. I just got off a call today with someone. He said they work in a high stress type of industry, low pay, crappy work, lots of pressure. Every 30 days he's hiring and firing, or not even firing. There's just so much turnover, and we don't think about that replacement cost or what it takes to actually fill those shoes, the recruitment cost. Like you said, the onboarding itself takes 30, 60, 90 days sometimes. So there's so much added cost that why do you feel like companies don't take those numbers into as much account as they should?
That's a good question. In being in corporate myself, there's always more of the emphasis on the sale or the revenue and less on the cost side. And of course that's important. And believe me, when companies say like they always want to be reducing costs, but there's a point where it's penny wise, pound foolish. If you cut out your well-being programs, you're cutting out the well-being of your people. And right there, then you're losing your human approach, right? We're not machines. We need human to human exchange. We need real programming that can support us and be agile during this time. And so as we think about, well, what's ahead, what's next, now is the time that we can actually be proactive. Even the trends of the clients that I've been speaking with or individuals just along the way, the first month, of course, was shock. The second, third, fourth months were, this will end soon. And then I think we had this, the summer was this reality moment of, okay, this isn't changing anytime soon. Now companies are at least talking about 2021. But even I think Google said, right, they're talking about Q2 or Q3 of next year. So that's a little shy of a year away. So we need to be now proactive that this might be our normal for a year or longer. And even with some companies deciding to go remote altogether, even without COVID, there's still going to be different pressures being at home of having to balance and juggle it all. There needs to be that approach. And now is the time to start to plan it out. And if you're someone who is late to the game, you're not too late. It's never too late. Do something about it. Take that action.
On that note, what have you seen companies do that is working well? Like what types of steps could companies put in place? Let's say budgets got cut, they had layoffs, high stress environment. I think everyone again is in their own shitstorm, so to speak. What have you seen companies do well, or how can companies weather this storm?
Right. And I think one of the best things that they can be doing is really taking a deeper dive into the resourcing and the budgeting. A lot of companies already had a budget for maybe yoga once a week, and that might be in a very well-to-do type of organization. Others might just have gym reimbursements, and figuring out how can we take these pools of money that we were giving to people that now they can't really use and put it into greater purpose. And that's where even coming in of what I'm seeing or how I work with companies is it's starting to create a human approach to well-being, because you can't say it's the same for all employees. You have some that are in their four walls dealing with isolation, others that are dealing with caretaking and homeschooling. So it's being really mindful that we're not all the same. We have different needs. And that's when companies are coming in and I'm seeing the most successful, when they're willing to take unique approaches to individuals to support action. But we can start at a really high level. You can start with general concepts that support well-being and energy management, creating a culture of wellness where we cut off at a certain time every day so that people can rejuvenate, or taking maybe Fridays, no meetings, where people can just work. And it's little things, just like our own well-being or those little diseases, quelling them, just like we need to inside of an organization, because those little diseases are the ones that are going to create larger turnover, the cost of lack of productivity, presenteeism, absenteeism, all of that stuff.
I love that. I think there's so much power in the little things that stack up and compound over time. It doesn't need to be this big, out of the blue, out of nowhere tactic or strategy or approach. the little things like you just said about Fridays, no meetings, having that wellness in play. It's these things are really like compounding interest, right? They pay dividends for the future and for the future and for the future. I remember I worked at an oil and gas company for 5 years, and when the price of oil took a hit, I'm not saying it was a pandemic, but it was of the same thing. Budget cuts were happening. All the contracts were being renewed.
Of course.
All the salaries were being looked at. Headcount was being looked at. One of the first things to go was our wellness program. And we had someone that would come in 3 days a week. It would foam roll staff. And it was, for those of you who don't know what a foam roller is, first of all, it's 2020. You should know what a foam roller is.
I have one right over there.
Yeah. But it's just this piece of, I don't know, styrofoam, for lack of a better word, that you roll over your muscles for
a rolling pin for humans.
A rolling pin for humans helps you break out the kinks and the knots in your body. They're amazing. You could use like a tennis ball or a golf ball or like a very hard hockey ball, but nothing beats like a good foam roller. And anyways, we had this company come in 3 days a week that would set up 15-minute meetings with staff. They'd do the ergonomic assessments and all that stuff, but they would also have 15-minute foam rolling sessions. And they were the best. Like, employees loved them. Everyone was booking them like 3 weeks out because they were so popular. But it was a big contract to the company, and it was one of the first things to go. And it was one of the first things that people really felt missing as part of the company culture.
Morale is important. It's the little things. When we have our people working 60 to 100-hour weeks because they're hitting a deadline, it's funny what a basket of fruit will do, or breakfast on Fridays. It's like you said, it's the little things that keep people happy. So knowing that by cutting that, we're trimming something that might not be actually serving us, because now people are home. When's the last time you've had a team lunch? And when's the last time you were able to just all be together without it either feeling forced? You're missing that coffee talk. You're missing those moments.
Water cooler moments. Yeah.
And we need to absolutely think of ways to bring that back, because for most of us, that's the reason why we stayed at our jobs as long as we have been, because of the people, because of the culture, because of those things. So now we need to think of new ways to, innovate, just like we have been, and be resilient, knowing that things are not going to be the same as they were, but they can be even better.
I'm going to ask you a difficult question.
Bring it. Let's do it.
Assuming all of your knowledge was just wiped and you had to share one tactic, strategy, idea that you feel every company or anybody with a team really should implement into their business, into their organization, into their company, but you can only pick one thing. And I know this is a difficult question, but any thoughts as to what that one thing might be?
I like this, actually. I think it's a good question. And I could give so many.
Because here's the thing is, when I ask you this, I know you're thinking of like 10, 15, 20 ideas that you have. Like, you got to do this. You got to change up your team meeting structure. Fridays, no meetings, mandatory foam rolling. Like, there's so many ideas that must come to mind for you. And the reason I ask it this way is I'm trying to prevent overwhelm for somebody who knows they have to do something. And it's like when people want to get in shape, they YouTube or they Google like how to lose weight, how to get in shape, how to build muscle. And there's so many options that you end up doing nothing because of just information overload. And I find the biggest thing with companies is you can share amazing ideas with them. I do it all the time. And there is this notion of, well, I only have so much time. I only have so much bandwidth. I only have so much blah, 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 all excuses. But if you were to cut out everything and change one thing, what would be the easiest, most impactful thing?
Yeah, easiest and most impactful, because you can say like what would be more challenging but better, there's all that, but easiest and most impactful. I would say everyone having their unique office hours and making it known, and everybody respecting that person's hours. So it's a two-way street. So
I know what you mean, but explain what you mean to those listening.
So what this would mean is maybe I'm a 9 to 5er. I like starting at 9. I like ending at 5. Whereas you are joining me and you're like, well, I'm an early bird. I like to start at 7 and end at 3. And I need to respect that you end at 3, and you also need to not be booking me at a meeting at 8 a.m. because I start at 9. I think if there was respect for time, for one another's time in a genuine way, and a real cutoff, and maybe, who works 8 hours anymore, right? I'm sure somebody is listening and thinking that. Even if we had a real 10-hour where it's like, I work 9 to 7, but nobody bothers me after 7 o'clock. No emails, no expectations. That would improve productivity. It would create a sense of disconnection, knowing like I clock out. And there is something about that, like more manual, like I used to actually clock out of a job and you're just like, like you're free. And even though we don't have that anymore, to be able to just close the computer without looking at my phone questioning, is something big going to come in, instead disconnect. So if that's like the one simplest thing that everybody could do, it's respect for one another's schedules and sticking to our schedule.
I love that. And I worked at a random tidbit that doesn't need to be in this podcast, but now is a part of this podcast, is I worked at a chicken plant, like a chicken factory plant, as a summer student, like years ago. I'm talking 10 plus years ago. And we also had to clock in and clock out because everything was time stamped. We had to enter our employee number into the system. And there was this sense of like checking out and like, I can go home. I can do my thing. If I was to answer that question that I just asked you, again, my head goes to like 30 different ideas.
For sure.
But the one that comes to mind in this moment is every meeting should have some sort of intention. And not just a meeting for the sake of a meeting, or not just, hey, so what do you guys want to talk about today? Or, hey, how was your weekend? Hey, this is a meet. Like, it's so many meetings. And even now I'm finding with Zoom, that's becoming difficult too, because a lot of people are asking for your time. They're asking for, hey, Lauren, come be on my podcast. You don't know me, but I promise it'll be fun. Or, hey, Lauren, like, came across your profile. I think we should connect. Like, you're getting a lot of these same messages. How do you navigate people that want your time?
It's really important to honor our time. For me, whether it's in this moment of COVID or beyond, it's these boundaries. And boundaries are so hard because they're intangible. But I try to, when I work with clients, to really create tangible boundaries. So it is maybe having the confines of your own schedule. It is having that intention. Why am I on this podcast today? Why am I saying yes to a virtual coffee? Why am I doing that? And not all of them are for personal gain. I was on a call this morning and they asked me to do, I'm going to be doing a series for them, but it's for a not-for-profit in a moment that has no budget. Like, it's not like I'm gaining money. It's not like I'm winning, but you know what? It's for nurses and nurse practitioners. And for me, they need this. They need to talk about burnout. They need resources more than anything. And so I think it's important to just figure out, where can I be of most service? And when I know that, for me, that's worth my time. If it feels like fluff of just like, hey, like, we're in similar industries, let's connect. It's like, great, I'd love to, but maybe I'll kick that can a month or two down the road. Cause I feel like I am on a mission right now. I am here to serve individuals. I'm here to support companies. And even if for some reason they're in a bind, like, I don't want that stopping you from your employee burning out altogether. So that's where I'm at right now, of just making sure that everybody's cup is full, because I know and I trust that when I do that, it comes back. Maybe not from them directly, but I know that the right one will come, and it's that reciprocity that I've been trusting, and it's been working out.
I love that approach. That's a very, very humble and very real approach to business and life. Kudos to you for saying it that way, because I know a lot of people who wouldn't do that because there is no monetary exchange.
There's a term, and it's called giver's gain. And I love that. And it's like, the more you give, the more you gain. And, as much as, I don't know, I guess I have to pay the bills this month, I also need to pay them in 10 years. And I trust that.
I love that.
it's all gonna balance, and there's gonna be that day when they're like, oh, you come back. And I'm not doing it for the intention of come back. It's just, if I keep watering the root of a tree, I trust that one day it'll feed me, even if somehow it happens to be the tree right next to it that gives me that fruit. It's all good.
I love that. For those of you listening, and I say this a ton in podcasts, go listen to the last 5 minutes, please, because just go re-listen to the last 5 minutes, because what Lauren just said about givers gain and doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, you just inspired me. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
So Lauren, what fills up your cup?
In terms of not burning out, or just
Yeah, how do you stay, as the person filling up other people's cups, as the savior in someone's dark moment, as the woman who's deciding to step up to the challenge? How do you recharge? How do you fill up your cup?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And hopefully even the answer will benefit who's listening beyond just learning about me and my quirks. But the reality is my morning routine is epic. And I'm sure you've probably heard this and all the books that talk about it, but how important and sacred that time is to my own well-being. So a lot of times on my calendar, you'll probably see that I don't accept meetings until after 10 a.m. And so I try to, depending on the day, I'm up by 6 latest, but sometimes a lot of times earlier. And I do a whole set of things, whether it's self-massage, tongue scraping, listening.
Can we dive into that? Because I love talking.
I can do all of it. So tell me what you want.
Yeah, I love talking morning routines. And when I hear about somebody else's, I'm like, ooh, tell me more. So I think a lot of people listening to this have some sort of morning ritual, or they get the importance of it, but I'd love to hear yours.
Right. And even if you're the person that says I'm the, I'm the night owl and mornings aren't my thing, even if you can carve out some time, the last thing I want for anybody is getting out of bed and turning on their computer and starting their workday. Mm-hmm. That is the worst way to really knock your energy. They say your energy is a bell curve, and it starts and it ends the same way. And so when you wake up, you're tired. Of course, you just woke up and you had energy from restoring, but you need a moment to really come into life. Just like a baby when it's born doesn't move for like a year. And then it finally starts to learn how to crawl, learn how to do all these things. And at the end of our life, we slow down, we become more sedentary again. The same comes for our day. At the end of the day, we shouldn't be hustling to send out those last emails. We should be slowing down, taking those minutes to really find gratitude in our day, to slow down, to find appreciation. But the morning is this epic way to start your day, because if you eat a cinnamon roll first thing in the morning, you will crave sugar for the rest of the day. So this is that same idea that you want to start healthy first thing in the morning, to serve yourself, to serve your energy, and even to serve others. Caretakers who are, listen up, because this also applies to you. Even if you have to wake up at 5 or even 4:30 in the morning, I've gotten comfortable with even like creeping into the 4s in some days. Wow. Because you just have to. I have to, because that's really what gives me what I need to show up for others. So do you want me to get into the specifics of my morning?
I would love to hear it.
Okay. So, and I might not be exactly in this order, but it will go something like this. I'll wake up and I do not snooze. And the first thing I say or think in my head is,
how do you prevent not snoozing?
So there's a mantra like I have, but it's really like, what's that thing that's going to light that fire under your butt? And don't let it be the work deadline. So for me, like I wake up and I'm like, I'm here in service. Let's start, and it's that I wake up, and sometimes I just sit there for a minute because my body again needs to like come to life, but I'm like, I'm awake. Snoozing is the first decision of your day that you're making to go against your greatest self. You need to get out of bed. You deserve to get out of bed. Don't take those extra 10 minutes. Instead, go to bed 10 minutes earlier, or just then set your alarm for 10 minutes later, but like, don't snooze. Don't snooze. So once you not snooze, right, I roll out of bed and I make warm lime water. So I boil my water, I add some lime. Lime is better than lemon. I get this question a lot because lemon can have more of an acidic and corrosive effect on the teeth when it's hot water, whereas lime is less acidic, less intense. So that has a whole detoxifying property on the body. It helps stimulate bowel movement. It helps hydrate the body. Really great. From there, I do a self-massage. And so while I'm doing self-massage, I'm listening to peaceful music, right? I'm serving my senses. So in the morning, I'm focusing on nourishing all 5 senses. So what I hear is important, what I feel on my skin. So I'm taking a nice oil and I'm massaging my skin before I jump into the shower. Even what I taste through the sour lime water, right? I'm nourishing and hydrating and loving all of my senses. And so I continue, and depending on the
This is, by
day.
the way, this is making me want to do this like right now. Like,
So
oh my
carve
God,
out
where's
your
the oil?
morning.
Where's the lime? Where's the, yeah, lime, right?
I need all these things. And so I can keep going on. Sometimes there's movement, sometimes there's not. Sometimes it looks like yoga. Sometimes it's just rolling all of my joints just to wake them up, right? It doesn't have to look the same. And for someone who's like, wait, she didn't even get through like breakfast or anything else, just know that not every day is the same. I have a bag of tricks. Depending on how much time I have every morning, I dip into that bag. And sometimes that massage is essentially just like a 5-minute oil, moisturization. Some days it's a 30 to 45-minute true massage, right? And that will depend on how much time I have. But for me, I know that self-massage not only benefits my physical form, but it boosts my confidence, my energy. It creates a barrier between me and the rest of the world. So when social media is getting wild, I have my oil massage, I have my Abhyanga. And so for me, those are important staples: having a good breakfast, trying to eat it around the same time every single day, no more than plus or minus 30 minutes. And while I'm even hearing me say all of this, it's like, dang, that girl is strict. And what I'll say is, like, this accountability, this routine, it gives me freedom, to be honest. It gives me the energy I need to show up for others, like you said, in that way that I can hold that kind of space. So I need that every day.
I love this so much. It's only, not even 5 p.m. where I am, and I want to go to bed just so I could wake up tomorrow and
Do
start.
it. I love it. Well, I mean, it's a little early for bed, but yeah, I mean, set it up. For a lot of us, it's like, well, how do we get there? What are the next steps? I'm not an early bird. Work your way towards it. Work your way towards a time. Can you carve out, start with 30 minutes? And if 30 minutes feels like way too much, 15 minutes, right? And if you don't have time for 15 minutes for yourself, I question that. I used to be an auditor in my day. I'll find 15 minutes, right? When you're scrolling on Facebook between things, right?
Yep.
And in the morning, it's that first thing that nobody can really get in the way of. Who's going to call for a work meeting at 5 a.m? I mean, now we're so global. It could be anybody or, across the world, but really that's not very often that you have those crazy early calls.
Yeah, I spoke to somebody yesterday at like 3 p.m. my time, and it was like 5 a.m. for her in Australia. And I
Yeah,
was like, what? You got up at 5 a.m. to talk to me? It was
nice.
super interesting. But I am definitely a morning person, 5 a.m. all day long. I go to bed by 10:30. I'm up at 5. The first thing
Awesome.
I do is I boil my kettle, make a tea, 10 minutes of meditation, gratitude journal, and the 5-minute journal,
Love
read
it.
maybe a little bit of movement, some yoga, and then I go for a long walk somewhere as long as there's trees and nature. I will listen to a podcast while I'm on that walk, but I find by the time I get home, I'm already at like 8,000 steps. I'm already feeling like I've won the day. And then any sort of bonus exercise I do that day is just a bonus, but it definitely sets me up for the day. I think that quiet time I have to myself is the most valuable time that I have every single day. And I know that the days that doesn't happen, I'm very reactive. I'm playing catch up. I tend to check my email and go on my laptop way quicker than I should. But love what you're saying about this morning routine. I think they're so powerful.
I love it. Yeah, it's your morning is very similar, right? You get up early, you're kettling you're
Yep.
boiling and drinking, and no, it's so great. And even they say this time, the hour before sunrise, is or even the hours before sunrise is this magical time
Mm-hmm.
in the Ayurvedic literature. And a lot of us know that there's that 5 o'clock magic, that before the sun rises, there's a different energy of the day. We know it feels a little different, where once the sun rises, there's a little bit more heaviness, more fogginess, but that clarity. I can't tell you how many mornings sometimes I've just woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning randomly for whatever reason, but then my creativity comes to life. The idea, the thing that I've been meditating on for months answered so quickly. So there's a magic to those early morning hours.
I get all my best ideas, I think, in that time, to be honest.
That's another reason why I don't book meetings until a little bit later. For me, my creative time is in the morning as well. So once I shift to work, I want to be in that flow state.
I typically don't book meetings until after 1 p.m., just the way my calendar is structured, and I'll leave the morning open. I will leave the morning open for if it's a very important client call, or if I have to get a podcast in, I will. But other than that, it's a lot of my calendars, just these automatic calendars, they don't begin until 1 p.m. for my time.
Yes.
And it's
awesome.
Amazing. So Lauren, I've got 3 final questions to ask you before I let you leave and press the leave me or the leave meeting button on Zoom. My first question is, are there any books or are there any sort of authors, any types of books that you've read the most that have had a big impact on you, ones that you like to give to others, ones that you recommend for just a better life, better business for entrepreneurs?
For entrepreneurs? Is that the hat? Okay.
I mean, it doesn't have to be, but given the scope of this conversation, I think is very much life well-being, not necessarily for entrepreneurs, but
sure.
Any books that you would define as your game changers?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you one that's like kind of like left brain and one right brain. So the one that I would say that is really great as we're talking about burnout and we're talking about entrepreneurs, I'll even promote my friend Caitlin O'Donovan. Kate is actually launching her book today. It's
Amazing.
it's called The Bounce Back Ability Factor.
Cool.
And it's all about entrepreneur burnout. So I was really grateful for her because she wrote the book that I wanted. So now I don't have to write it. So it's so great.
I'd love to get her on the show as well.
Yeah, I will make the intro. You'll love her. She's amazing. She's amazing. So that's one incredible resource for entrepreneur burnout that will be really beneficial, just learning about what it is and how it works in terms of burnout. And then the other one that I love to just mention is The Journey Home by Radhanaswami. And it's about this incredible man who's from Chicago, ends up going to Europe one summer and has this vision that he needs to go to India. And so literally backpacks through the Middle East into India, and then his journey of becoming a Swami. But all of the parts of the journey and the things that he learned and that resonate within the hearts of all of us, I think is just a deep learning and to connect to our deeper self. You know, we talked about the physical and the mental, but it's that deeper part that needs that love too.
I love books like that because you think you're going to learn like a business lesson and you walk out with 10 life lessons.
Life lessons are better, I think.
They're the best. My next question is, what are you the most excited about in the next 60 days?
I was like, okay, what's 60 days? Okay, in the next 60 days. Wow, that's a good question. It has me like, what's going on?
Before the end of this year.
Okay, fine. I'll do that. That's just easier. You know, I'm actually looking forward to the holidays, and my family, we've all decided we're going to be together this holiday, no matter what, right? We're going to figure out a way to do it. We're all going to get tested if we need to, but we're going to be together, which is going to be really sweet. And I really look forward to that. Professionally, I just look forward to every passing year, the growth, the ability to serve others. Last year was so different than this year, and I'm so grateful for both of them. So just really appreciating how I can show up.
I love that response. Very real. And my last question is my favorite question these days. Tomorrow morning, everybody in the world wakes up. Every city, every country, every continent wakes up tomorrow morning. They open up their curtains and everyone is looking at the exact same billboard. but Lauren gets to decide the message for the entire world to see, what would you write on that billboard?
So funny. Give peace a chance was like the first thing that came to my mind. I think we could all use a little bit more compassion, more love. So something around like love your neighbor type of camaraderie.
I love it. We'll combine both of those two.
There you go.
Lauren, this has been an absolute honor. You just seem like such a real person. And I say the word real, I've probably called you real like 10 times in this show because it's what's coming up for me. You're a very, very real, relatable person. And you sound like you're just doing the right thing. And I think a lot of people could learn a ton from you. So I just wanted to say, I'm super grateful that you joined us here today. And where can people find you?
Thank you so much. It's an honor. That's why I love the name of your podcast, because it's real, it's human, it's authentic, and I love that. If anyone's looking to connect with me, they can go to acheloawellness.com, ACHELOA Wellness. You can email me, Lauren at Acheloa Wellness, but feel free to find me through any of those channels. Acheloa Wellness on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm everywhere where you would expect me to be. You can absolutely find me there.
Awesome. And we'll link all that up in the show notes. Lauren, have an amazing rest of your week. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure.